Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, July the 2nd, 2020. It is currently 11:35 a.m. Central Time, and once again, I'm live behind the microphone. I'm live in front of the microphone. I still haven't settled that, so you can email me and tell me, should I say behind the microphone or in front of the microphone? To me, I'm in front of it. I'm in front of it. I'm speaking directly into it, so therefore I'm in front of it. But once again, I'm in front of this microphone. I'm live on the air, and I'm coming to you from the middle of nowhere, Texas. So no one can find me, so I'm completely safe. No one can track me down. I'm so far off the radar that I don't think all the governments in the world combined could figure out where I am. Yes, I'm coming from an undisclosed location in the middle of nowhere. So I can say anything I want and I'm free of anyone finding me. Okay, well, maybe that's a little exaggerated, but yes, here I am. I hope you're having a great day. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to me live, I greatly appreciate it. As always, you can contact me by emailing me at newsif, that's newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. I always appreciate hearing from those who listen, your questions, your thoughts, your complaints, your criticisms. Yes, feel free to contact me. I greatly appreciate it. But I'm not here to talk about email. I'm not here to talk about being on the air. I'm not here to talk about the location that I'm currently broadcasting from. No, I am here to talk about something very important. Let's talk about money and politics, or should we say politics and money? Which comes first, the politics or the money, or does the money bring about the politics? Oh, that could be a great philosophical discussion. But no, we're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about money. And you may say, well, you don't care about politics and you don't care about money, but stay with me because I'm going to make this very applicable to you and to me, because guess what? We're impacted by this whole idea of money. We're impacted by the desire for it. We are impacted by the sin of greed. So there's a lot of things I think that we can talk about that will be very applicable, but we're going to begin by considering money and politics, especially the current situation, because we're in the middle of an election year. And let's talk about money as it relates to, well, the person running on the Democratic side and the person obviously on the Republican side. All right, let's listen to this. I heard this. This is the first news story I heard this morning when I woke up. I was listening to BBN radio, and then when I woke up, I leaned over, grabbed my iPad, and went to my podcast app, my Apple podcast app, where I have a kind of a playlist of all of these podcasts that I follow. And I did a refresh and hit play, and this is what I heard. Listen carefully.
We are 4 months out from Election Day, and money is flooding in. Both campaigns announced big fundraising totals last night. Usually, an incumbent president raises more than a challenger, but that didn't happen this time. Joe Biden, with $141 million, raised a bit more than President Trump. And
stop right there. $141 million. $141 million has been raised so far, all right, or just recently, $141 million. I don't know if that's a total. Maybe that's a total for the recent fundraising. $141 million, listen, raised in order for Joe Biden to run to become president, even if he doesn't win. That's $141 million raised. That's $140 million that is exchanged hands, all in order to get someone elected to be president of the United States of America. $141 million. That's just for Joe Biden. I'm going to mention President Trump here in a minute, but I just want you to consider the amount of money raised and the amount of money spent and the amount of money that exchanged hands just in order to try to get someone elected to the office of president. Then you take You take all the money raised for all the political campaigns, Senate, Congress, just all the political campaigns that are, it seems like, constantly happening. Obviously, we have an election cycle, but you've got city, you've got state, you've got the federal government. You have all of these things being run, just all the money that is required just to get people elected. And this is the question. Those who give the most, those who are involved in this money exchange, those who are more involved in the exchange of the money, wouldn't logic dictate they have more access, they have more power, they have more advantages? So when all of this money is being raised to elect a political official, is that political official more worried about you and more worried about me, or more worried about those that are required for money, those who give the money, those who have the money? Aren't they more concerned about working for them? While they claim they're working for the average man, well, the average man, we don't have any access. We have no power. We have very little say-so other than one vote. That's all we have. But it's the people with the money. They have the access. They really have the power. They have the powerful working for them, which gives them more power. It's hard to wrap your mind around how much money is spent simply to get politicians elected. And somehow, many within the church constantly turn to the political world as that's the source of our hope, or that's where answers are going to come from, or that's how we're going to fix the world. No, politics equals money. Money equals politics. It's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious circle. Politics is nothing more than about money and power. It's not about helping you or helping me or saving a country. There's so much money tied up into it that there's no way to separate it. $141 million for just Joe Biden. Let's listen to the rest of this.
Our White House correspondent Tamara Keith has been looking into the numbers. Good morning, Tam.
Good morning.
Let's start with Joe Biden and his $141 million. How did he pull in that money?
Well, according to Biden's campaign, 68% of June's donors were brand new to the campaign. Overall, they say the average donation was $34. Now, campaigns love to emphasize that small amount, but Biden also got the big checks too. Biden held some high dollar fundraisers, all of them virtual. There was one with former President Obama that raised $11 million. He also held fundraisers with Elizabeth Warren, Senators Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris, each of those raising several million. Now, this is the second month in a row that Biden has outraised Trump. He outraised him for the quarter, too. And, the remarkable thing is this was solidly in the middle of the pandemic, this whole quarter, with millions of Americans out of work. And in part, what this does.
So let's stop right there. It sounds like that's $141 million raised in a month during the middle of a pandemic where millions of people are out of work. So millions of people are out of work. Small businesses are in danger of going under. You've got people in financial ruin, but $141 million is raised so a person can have the chance of becoming president. You don't see the craziness of this. You don't see the misplaced priority. But the people who have the money, the people giving the money, they're doing so not out of the kindness of their heart. They're doing it for position. They're doing it for power. They're doing it for access. And people, and of course the campaigns love to, the average check was $34. Well, why in anyone in their right mind giving money for the whole political system? Why would you do that? In the middle of a pandemic where there's so many needs, millions of dollars are going to politicians so that they can run a campaign. I'm telling you, if there's ever something that's been needed, that we need desperately term limits where a person runs, they get one shot to do what they're going to do, and then that's the end. So they don't have to immediately get elected and start worrying about getting reelected, because this is what happens. You get elected and immediately you start thinking about being reelected. Well, guess what you have to do? You have to start raising more money. And guess what you're doing? You're raising more money. Who are you working for? Who are you focused on? The people who are going to give you money. Guess what you have to do? You have to start looking at every decision in light of how it will impact your ability to get reelected, instead of doing what is necessary and doing what is right. We need term limits. I think one term, that's it. You're done. So you don't have to worry about raising any more money. You don't have to worry about making decisions that's going to please people. You can make the decisions that are best for the country. I think that is important. And I think there should be a limit in how much money can be spent on a political campaign. Limit the amount of money that can be spent. Just stop all of this. No, it's just money. And it just goes where? $141 million goes to Joe Biden. For what? Where could that money, think of all the things that we talk about, that is problems in the world. But no. We're going to spend all of this money to get people a chance to be elected. That's $141 million. It sounds like $141 million for that month. That is insane. Let's continue listening.
This shows that there is momentum, that, there have been a lot of polls that have come out, state polls, national polls. Essentially every poll in recent weeks has shown Biden with a solid lead. Well, it's not just the polls. Now you see that he has an advantage in fundraising, which is incredibly rare for an incumbent.
So we have this really interesting historical precedent where usually the incumbent does better with fundraising than the challenger. President Trump raised a lot. He raised $131 million in June, still less than Joe Biden.
All right, $131 million by Trump in the month of June. $131 million. So $141 million, $131 million. Look at all of that money. And that's in 1 month. In 1 month. And then we talk about all the issues in our society and all of that money going for that, not going for our national debt, not going for all the issues that we need. No, it goes to just get people elected, or to even attempt to get elected. Because look, all of that money being raised, Biden and Trump, both of them are not going to get elected. So one side, all that money, it was for what? Absolutely nothing. For an attempt that ended up in a losing proposition, and the money is gone. Is the money going to be refunded? No. Let's continue.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, so this was something remarkable. The Trump campaign has had a fundraising machine, and the reality is $131 million is nothing to sneeze at. The Trump campaign said that this is a massive haul. They kept using the word haul, and said that it was fueled by digital, mail, and online donors. They say that this shows that there's real enthusiasm for President Trump, and they were really crowing about it for a couple of hours until the Biden campaign came out with their fundraising totals that were even higher. The Trump campaign raised $14 million just on President Trump's birthday. It was a big push that they had in the quarter. And so right after the Tulsa rally that was underattended and sort of a disappointment, I was talking to a top fundraiser for Trump, and I said, well, are you worried about that? And he said, no, don't look at that for enthusiasm. Look at our fundraising. And then I said, well, what about Biden? Biden's campaign seems to be catching up there and doing well. He said, no, I would rather be in our position because look at our cash on hand. And the reality is that the Trump campaign started fundraising, started running for re-election, basically as soon as he was sworn in. The Trump campaign says that they have $300 million in the bank. We don't have that total yet for Biden's campaign. Biden has been spending a lot to ramp up their staffing in the last quarter.
How are the campaigns using all of this money at this point?
personnel, ads. One thing that's very interesting, the Trump campaign spent something like $2 million in the last week on Facebook ads. Meanwhile, Biden's campaign spent about half that much. And they're also, Trump's campaign is booking ads for the fall at this point, and booking ads in states that he won somewhat handily last time, including Ohio. It's a defensive crouch.
And 6 months in, of course, it'll be interesting to see how these campaigns change their messaging because the country is in such a different place than it was at the start of the year. NPR White House correspondent Tamara Keith. Tam, thank you.
You're welcome.
$300 million in the bank. Yeah. All for politics. I did some research while that was playing. I found this. Presidential elections are an expensive venture. At first glance, it may not appear the standing on a stage telling people why they should vote for you would be costly. However, the cost associated with getting a candidate's name out there nationwide for all to become familiar with can be quite expensive. The cost of campaigning to be elected president has steadily risen over the last 100 years. Between 2000 and 2012, campaign spending by the candidates more than quadrupled. Right, so it just continues to go up and up and up. In the 2016 campaign, Republican Donald Trump and runner-up Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton spent a combined, are you ready for this, $1.16 billion. That's billion with a B, $1.16 billion. Including all the candidates in 2016, the election cost a total of $2.4 billion. So $2.4 billion was spent in 2016 for the election. $2.4 billion. I don't know how many times I can repeat that. $2.4 billion. Billions of dollars are spent over and over and over again, all for the whole political machine. It's a political monster, and people keep feeding it with its money, feeding it. Politicians make promises. They rarely come through on those promises. They do things in order to get reelected. They do things to ensure that they're pleasing their donors. They're doing things to ensure they're pleasing the people that are giving all the money. It's just crazy. And the average person, we're out here on the outside. We're so far removed from that entire system that we're not, I don't even know you can say we're on the outside looking in. We're on the outside on another planet, okay? And all of those politicians and the whole political machine is just marching on. They're moving forward with their own agenda, trying to please the people who can give them the money, the people who can help them get reelected, and we're just outside of the whole system. And we really don't matter. We only matter to get us to vote. In other words, manipulate the average person who doesn't really matter to get them in office, to give them power. Then they're going to do exactly what they want in order to please the people who have the real power, and that is the people who have the money. I know you may say that's a very cynical perspective, but I think that if any perspective that it doesn't look at it that way is naive, and you have been deceived, and you are foolish. The political system is all about money and power, and you are simply a useful tool to use for a very specific thing, which is to just go in there and vote, and that is about all that you're needed for. And outside of that, nothing really matters. And you can say that it does, and you can sit there and turn your attention to that world to try to find solutions and try to find answers. But if you're doing that, I'm telling you, it's foolish. It's vanity. It's meaningless. It's useless. It's all shadow and no substance. It's just void. Don't do that. And yet more and more Christians are looking to that world for some kind of solution. But that whole thing, money. When I heard that story this morning, I immediately got up and I started looking for some Bible verses that just relate to the subject of money and greed. And I found a couple here. And I thought I would we will read a couple of them and kind of use this news story to kind of give, for kind of a devotional thought on this subject. The first one that I came to my mind was Hebrews. The book of Hebrews, chapter 13. The book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 5. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. Let your conversation, that's how the King James translates it, let your manner of life be without covetousness, and be content with such things as you have, for he hath said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Let your life, let your whole manner of life be without covetousness. Don't sit there and covet and want. Whether it's power, whether it's position, or whether it's money. Another translation states it this way: keep your lives free from the love of money. Hebrews 13:5, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I forsake you. As a Christian, what we should be preoccupied with is God and being content with God. And this whole greedy system of politics, that's not what we want to look to, and we don't want to find ourselves being pulled in that direction. But we want to ensure that your life, look, we can sit there and point the finger at politicians and politics as being greedy and this whole system built on money. But we have to look in the mirror and to ensure that our lives are free from the love of money, free from covetousness, free from greed, and that we are truly content, that we are content with God. Let me read this again, Hebrews 13:5. I'll read it from a different translation. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Right? Hebrews 13:5 in the King James, let your conversation, let your manner of life be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have, for he hath said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. What level of contentment is in your life? How content are you? How much does money and greed and covetousness influence your life? How much are you dominated with the thought of money? Now, I know we have to worry about it. I know we have to have it. I know we have to pay bills. But we've got to try to not allow that to happen. And just realize politics is just based on the love of money and covetousness. Love for power, coveting power, coveting money, coveting position. No, we have to realize that. Let's look at another passage. Go to Luke chapter 12. Go to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12. Where do we want to start this story? Luke chapter 12. Let's go to verse 13, because this kind of request, someone comes up to Jesus and kind of wants him to get involved in a situation. Luke chapter 12, verse 13. And one of the company said unto him, Master, speak to my brother that he divide the inheritance with me. So Jesus has been teaching, and this man, all he wants to do is, hey, Jesus, I need you to step up here, and I need you to do something. Speak to my brother that he divide the inheritance with me. I want you to get involved in this family situation. And the reason I want you to get involved in this family situation is because I want my part of the inheritance. I want what's mine. And Jesus said unto him, Man, who made me a judge or a divider over you? And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. Beware of covetousness. Beware of greed. Beware of just being focused on getting things. Right? For man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. Your life does not consist in the things that you possess. No, I know we like to possess things, and I know we like things, and I know we like to have nice things, and I know we like to enjoy things. But somehow we've got to ensure that we can sit there and condemn politicians all day. That whole system is based off money, greed, and power. But While we're outside of it, in our own little worlds, we can create our entire systems that are still based on money, possessions, and power and position. Verse 16, Jesus continues, Luke chapter 12, and he spake a parable unto them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. And he said, this will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for money for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. Verse 20, but God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul, if I can read correct today, but God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Do not lay up treasures for yourself and is not rich towards God. Don't be that way. Don't be greedy. Don't be focused and preoccupied with the material and getting and getting and getting and everything that's focused here on this earth. Focus on heaven. Focus on God. Focus on other things. The whole political system could care less about God, could care less about anything else other than money and position and power. And we can fall into that same trap. That's Luke chapter 12. Right? Luke 12:15 in a different translation reads, then he said to them, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Then Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. The Bible has a lot to say on this subject. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. Very important warning. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. You can't do it. You can't serve both. And guess what? When it comes to politicians, they can't serve two masters. They're going to either hate the one and love the other, or they will hold to the one and despise the other. The same thing is true. Politicians love money, they love power, and they love position. So guess what they don't love? They don't love you, and they don't love your concerns, and they're not really worried about fixing any of those things because they can't be worried about fixing those things because they're in a system that is so corrupted by money. The whole system is a mess, all right? Let's go to some other passages here. I've got so many written down. Let's go to 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6. This is a good one. 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6. Where do we want to begin here? 1 Timothy chapter 6. Well, if you go to 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6, this is a good place to look. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. Godliness with contentment, that is what we need. Because you brought nothing into this world, and you're not carrying anything out of it. And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money, hear that again, for the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. I'm going to read this all again because it's such an important section of Scripture. Taking a drink of water. let me read this again because it's such a very important passage that we should really think about. We should probably memorize it. I may have to put this as a memory verse on our Bible memory app for everyone to work on. 1 Timothy chapter 6, starting in verse 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. Having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. And in verse 11, but thou, O man of God, flee these things and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and meekness. We have to beware of greed, of covetousness, of serving money, of loving money. We have to be aware of it. We have to ask ourselves, look, we can look at the political world and I can stand here and we can judge it all day and go, the whole political system is messed up. And I believe it is. And I believe it is corrupted by money. I believe that just takes away from what politicians are supposed to do. They're supposed to be there to serve and represent us, but they're there to serve and ultimately represent the people with the money, because those people with money have access and power, and those politicians want that power and they want that money, and it creates a cycle where we get thrown out of it. But we can be thrown out of it and we can be nowhere close to it. But then over here in our life, where we're a million miles away from that whole political mess, we create our own little systems about money, about power, about greed, about covetousness, about storing up for treasures for ourselves right here on this earth. And you look at what happens in many churches. Many churches struggle financially because the people aren't giving. Or you have churches that build these little mini kingdoms that need more and more money to feed the machine, more and more money to feed the big little kingdom that they've created, and they're not really doing the work of God and focused on the work of God, and it becomes all about money. And then those pastors, once they find themselves in those systems, guess what they have to do? They have to appeal and appease the people with the money. And the people in the church with the money typically have the power and have the position and have the say-so. And they typically get their way versus the person who can't give any money. And that's just as corrupt. The love of money is the root of all evil, of all kinds of evil. The love of money, covetousness, greed. Our entire political system is based off of it. We see the consequences of it over and over and over and over again. But what we need to do is learn a lesson from it. We need contentment with the things of God. We need to love God. Do not allow money to become an idol. Do not allow the pursuit of money to become an idol. Don't be so preoccupied with having all kinds of stuff to put in a barn for future generations to talk about security when you are downplaying the things of God. And what you're really doing is you're loving money and loving the pursuit of money. And that's what you're pursuing. That's what you're thinking about. And that's what you're focused on. You've got to acknowledge when greed and covetousness and the love of money has taken over your life. And you can be poor or you can be rich, and that can happen. The amount of money you possess is irrelevant. It's the preoccupation with it. It's the worrying about it. It's pursuing it. It's loving it. It's caring about it. Instead of loving and caring about the things of God and pursuing the things of God and pursuing what God calls us to do, which we have a responsibility to be ministers in a broken and fallen world. All right, I just wanted to bring that to your attention today. It got my attention this morning, convicted me just to make sure that, hey, is my life consumed with the love of things, the love of this world, the love of money? All of that fits together, and I think it's something that we should give much thought to. All right, I'll stop right there. Email me your thoughts, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. All right, thank you for listening. I apologize for my voice, having some struggle this morning. But hopefully I'll get it all situated here in a second, and I'm going to try to do a couple of more live broadcasts here in the next few minutes. So be ready and be on the lookout for them. All right. Thank you for listening. Again, you can contact me at newsif@yahoo.com. God bless.